All right, so it would help to know what camera I'm looking at. Okay, so this is a special edition of Conant Show, and I think we're up to show 84 or 85 or something. I don't know what that is, but today's date is 31st July 2019, Wednesday, here in Woodstock TV. And again, I'd like to just little shout out to our lovely technician, Paula Gloria, who's so kind to help make these shows seamless and as possible. And we have some new cameras, folks, so that was a big surprise to come into the studio after a hiatus that I've had and see some new cameras happening, which is a wonderful thing. And so a shout out to the town to acknowledge their improvements here at the studio. So, moving right along. Our guest tonight, Posar. Okay. Okay. And you're coming up from New York City, I take it.
I just came from New York City. It's a Joe's birthday party.
Right on. Yeah. I was there for a few minutes. Okay. Yeah.
For some reason, we don't have sound going out. I can see sound here, but it's not going out.
Okay.
Just kind of. Well, we're at least.
All right. I just saw something up there. There you go. Looks like there's a little bit of action going on in the.
Yeah, but I should be able to hear.
There's a little bit of action.
Okay, good.
All right, there we go. We're just working a few bugs out here as we get the show going here. Posar, I have a very brief understanding of you a little bit from a phone call with Paula here just today, actually. And you're involved with public access in Manhattan?
Not anymore.
Not anymore? At all? Okay, that's a lot more extreme than I was given to understand. I thought you were still actually broadcasting.
No, not anymore. I haven't broadcast a show since maybe 2005. Yeah, I got banned for 5 years, and I just got so deep into law stuff that I never really. I couldn't. It's hard to actually do papers and produce shows.
Don't we know about that here? Yes, we do know about having to do paperwork and dealing with the law and the courts and the system and trying to get shows out. And to do a quality show, you have to put, like anything else, it's an art form. You have to put the time into it. And so let me ask you this: where did this journey into law take you?
It's taken me into the self-representative's world. It's taken me and still have, but don't have time to pursue fully, cameras in the courtroom and what benefit they are to having them in there so people can actually see really how and when judges are breaking the law in action.
Yes.
Yeah, because you'll hear about a court decision, but you'll hear the result of the court decision. But how was that result reached? What evidence was produced? What evidence wasn't produced that should have been produced? What evidence was let in that shouldn't have been let in? So when you're actually looking at the court case, you see a lot of body language, especially from the judge, that you're not even going to see if you have the transcript. You're not going to see his body's language.
Right.
In the transcript.
Absolutely.
You're not going to see any witness that takes the stand. You're not going to see their body language. If you just... The mic isn't good. there's that. And
Yeah, I have encountered just exactly those kinds of issues in my foray into the courtroom. But to continue your thought.
well, you know, once I got a real hold on well, what happened was I was in a particular court case, and I wanted to get the transcript from the trial, because it was a trial,
Sure.
and I was acquitted, and the judge would not let me have the transcript. And as I sat there looking at this judge and him not dealing with the law that I was saying, I said, you know, if people could see him denying me, and I just Weinstein, his name was Leonard Weinstein, first Supreme Court, Manhattan County. He's probably passed by now, but I saw his face as I was just talking to you, and I said, if people could see him and the way he's unlawfully denying me, and if they could see other judges unlawfully denying other people, because I was sure this wasn't just a one-time thing.
No.
That would put pressure on them not to unlawfully deny people, if people could actually see them doing it. Because when you've got a bunch of people talking about unlawful activity that they witnessed, that's very powerful. That's like I don't know if you've heard about the Central Park 5. You heard about Central Park 5?
No.
Well,
No, I have not.
Yeah, the Central. I'm getting ready to sneeze. If I sneeze, wish me health.
Yeah, good health.
Thank you. Bless me. Okay. Central Park 5. In, I believe it was like 1989 or so. I can't remember the year exactly. A woman by the name of Patricia Mealy was raped in Central Park. Now, there were a group of youths, black youths, going around the park. There was no forensic evidence to tie any of these kids to her rape and really attempted murder, because the person who they finally found out did it hit her with a brick. So that's like very serious. But the thing was, they had no forensic anything on any of these children, right? 15 years old, 14, 16. No semen, no blood, no footprints, because there was a footprint, in the mud, forensic, none whatsoever. Yet, they got convictions on them. They were denied their lawyers. They were minors. And you can't question a minor without their parent being present, or not a lawyer being present. Even they're not even old. That's why they're minors. They're not old enough to make that decision, right? Anyway, Trump put out this ad in New York Times, full-page ad calling for the death penalty of these 5 children. What happened was a guy named Matias Reyes confessed, and his DNA matched, and I guess he said a lot of things that only the person who was there would know. And so they were exonerated, they were paid money, but the police were involved, very heavily involved in this a roundup, really. And as I said, Trump put this full-paid ad out calling for death penalty, and even though the person who did it, his DNA matched, everything matched, he still will not retract his death penalty call for these 5 youths, who the prosecutor himself has just said we're dismissing the case. Yeah, but if you could have seen that trial and the lack of evidence, the lack of representation that I'm sure had to happen for them to get convicted. Were they in the park? Yes. But what do you have that ties them?
oh, somebody made this confession. Okay, so if somebody made a confession that so-and-so did it, how come there's no forensic evidence to tie them to it? Because there was semen, there was blood.
And it didn't match any of the kids.
None of them. Linda Fairstein is now like, she's in big trouble. She's resigned from several boards, and people are calling for, we need to go back and examine this. But from a camera in a court point of view, there's so much information, and that's just one case that got brought to light. How many didn't? But if you can be in there with that camera to show the missing body language, if there's a trial and the defense attorney says whatever he says in his evidence, and if the judge does something like this, like, that's a signal to the jury to say, just discount what he said. It's a body language signal. It's a communication. As a matter of fact, in the federal rules of evidence, body language, right, is actually admissible to prove guilt or innocence. Right? It's actually evidence.
Sure.
Yeah. So if it's evidence, why can't I have a camera in the courtroom to actually witness the body language of the witness, right? And then replay that, whatever it was, to the jury during summation. Because people are not going to remember every body language that a witness goes through. But I can remind them of his body language if it looks like, I can suggest that as, he's saying in his body language, I'm guilty, I'm this, I'm that. I can argue that. Body language is real enough. So then I play that during, why can't I show that to the jury to highlight that his answer, his body language doesn't match his verbal language? Little indiscriminate, fidgety behavior. Yeah, he's nervous because he knows he's lying. But I can't collect that evidence, which the federal rules of evidence recognize body language, and state law recognizes body language too. But I can't collect that visual evidence. And you look like you're gonna.
Well, you're talking about something that is very important, and that is and what you're touching on is a self-protecting system, and when the operations of the court are going on, in theory, the judge is supposed to be impartial, unbiased. In theory, the judge isn't there to coach the jury. The jury is there to assess the evidence and the presentation and make up their own minds. And yet you have the judges coaching them, and judges' rules, I guess. I'm not sure what goes on when the judges talk to the jury before a trial.
Yeah.
But there's that. So it's the other thing that you're touching on is all these players. So you have a defense attorney, and then you have the plaintiff or the prosecutor, depending on the situation, and then you have the court clerks, and then you have the judge, and every one of these players or actors are bar attorneys. They're in a club.
Yeah, they're there all the time. They work there. They get paid there.
And that in and of itself is a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I don't know if how far you can get with that conflict, because it's certainly it's a conflict when a lawyer worked for the prosecutor's office for 30 years and then comes and becomes a judge, right? Who has he become friends with? Does it mean he's gonna give the prosecutor a favor? Not necessarily, and you can't prove it, but you in your mind know, if I spend 30 years with you, working side by side with you, then all of a sudden I'm in a judge's position with you, I know you, right? So, what else can you expect but favoritism, right? It would just be natural.
Well, say in a small area like Ulster County, for example, where kind of everybody knows each other. There's no anonymity here, say, as like maybe in a big city.
Right.
So the many of the criminal attorneys also work as public defenders.
The criminal attorneys?
Yeah.
You mean the prosecutors?
No.
You mean defensive criminal attorneys work as legal aid
Yeah.
attorneys? Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, you actually brought up something that there are criminal attorneys who work both sides. They also work for the prosecution as well as public defenders.
Yeah, that's a really.
Right, so that does happen around here. I wish I could drop a name, but at the moment I can't think of which attorney that it was that we found that out about, and that was pretty weird.
Yeah, to say the least.
But the thing is the problem that happens is that when you have a situation of either police misconduct or corruption, and you have a situation go down where a case is dismissed, a criminal case is dismissed because there was no evidence, and the defense attorneys don't even try to sue the police involved, the persons, for malicious prosecution.
Worse than that, those same legal aid attorneys will do things that will make it harder for you to sue. When you go sue government officials, you have to file in the state, you have to file a notice of claim from the within 90 days of the day that a case gets dismissed.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if your legal aid attorney is not telling you that, you're already being, and you don't know, you may blow your...
Or even the paid attorney, the one that you hired didn't inform this person.
Here's another one, an interest of justice dismissal. Usually when you got them, then they'll come and say, we need to dismiss this case in the interest of justice because they don't want the facts to come to light, right? Now, an interest of justice dismissal has several categories. You can't just say that word has definitions, and there's like 8 different reasons for which and only under which an interest of justice dismissal can be asked for. But they never highlight. One of those is serious police misconduct.
Yeah.
That's a reason to dismiss in the interest of justice. But if the
That's
defense
exactly
attorney,
the dismissal I'm talking about.
yeah, okay. Yeah, and now, if your legal aid attorney doesn't press the judge to say, well, under which paragraph, I think it's in the Criminal Procedure Law 210, I forget the name, but under which paragraph, because there's 8 different paragraphs, is he suggesting to dismiss the interest of justice upon? On which does he base it? Which one? He should do that because if it's left vague, right, it could be anyone. And if you consent, that's another part. If you consent to it, you're kind of giving up your right to sue to a degree because you're not getting a determination that decided the merits, right? Because if you get an interest of justice dismissal, it's not like people got up there and were proven to be liars, right? And then the jury goes no, or the judge even goes no. So that's one little trick. And the thing is, if you have a camera in there when he says that, now you got people, and then you bring it up that he never said under which paragraph this goes, and the judge just did it. Why would a judge dismiss without knowing which paragraph of interest of justice dismissal is applied? You can only apply those 8, but he just goes, okay, interest of justice dismissed. And now when you go to sue, you can't say that the prosecutor said there was serious police misconduct.
Well, I would argue that all 8 paragraphs apply.
You don't want all 8 paragraphs to apply. Not that I'm giving you advice.
I'm just saying that would be my argument.
No. But some of them are that it was so minuscule or that you had part to do with it, with the fact of, you know.
Oh.
Yeah, some of them are not good.
All right, so you have to read them each. You really have to know what they are.
Yes, yeah, and have it specified on the record, because they could come back when you go to sue and say, well, you agreed to it. That's another thing. Once you consent to an interest of justice dismissal, you're kind of going along with not clearing your name. So you always want to clear your name on an unequivocal basis.
Mm-hmm.
Because then nobody can go back and say, well, he agreed to a dismissal. You know, he didn't say he was right. He didn't say he wasn't guilty, or he didn't say this, or didn't say specifically that. So you got to, now, I mean, once the prosecutor says there's a serious police misconduct, which they never say, because nobody ever tells them which paragraph, right? So they never say it. If they said that, you could still not consent, because I wouldn't consent. But I would say I could understand why the court might do it. I don't consent to it, but being that there is police misconduct, and what police misconduct are you talking about? That would be another question I would ask. Like right there on the spot. With cameras, imagine with cameras, the presumed innocent. I never say the defendant, because if I have nothing to defend, I'm presumed innocent, right? But if the presumed innocent is asking the person, well, which police officer did which misconduct for which you want to dismiss that? Imagine the picture of that, right? You never see that. And only a person most likely self-representing would even dare ask that question, because an attorney would be like, well, if I ask that question and put them on the spot, I might get assigned, 100 miles away, and then every time I move out there, and you might get
Again,
retaliation.
that's the conflict of interest.
Right.
There is no dispassionate discourse in the courtroom. They are all working as an orchestrated. It's very orchestrated, and it's very almost ritual.
That is why cameras are so important, because without even knowing anything, people can see when they're watching body actions. People can get a better sense of what's happening and what's not. If you look at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, I mean, and you start to see how some people are treated and some people are not treated, you start to know, okay, they're giving, as it goes through time and you're watching these things because they're happening in your town or, they're of interest, you get to know what can be done, what can't be done, what should be done, and what shouldn't be happening is happening. The more you watch them. Going to the courtroom used to be like in this country, even as far as I know, every place where there's been courts of some kind, everybody's goes. It's like almost entertainment, but everybody's interested. People go to those, and but now everybody can't fit in the courtroom. Everybody can't fit in the courtroom. One of my early arrests was because it was my case, from doing protests. If you do protests, you're going to get arrested. So sooner or later,
Yeah.
you're going to get arrested, and if sooner or later, it's going to happen. So I wanted the camera to show, because protest is a First Amendment right to protest, right? And it says Congress will make no law abridging the freedom of the press. This is what the Constitution says. So how are you going to make a law that says I have to get this bullhorn when there's 30 buses over there making more noise than my bullhorn is making? I got to get a permit? On what law? By what law are you abrogating my right to freedom of the press? There's no law that could be made, right? So that was the case, without a permit, bullhorn without a permit. So I was representing myself. I'm representing myself. I've been studying law since 1995, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting up where the attorneys sit, right? And it says front row reserved for police and attorneys. Now, CPLR 105C says the word attorney applies to any person prosecuting or defending an action in person. So if you're personally doing it, you fit in the definition of attorney that's stuck on that wall that says front row reserved for police and attorneys. Oh, the law didn't matter. But imagine if I could have had a camera, me telling this court officer, CPLR 105C says I can sit here. He said, I don't care what it says. We don't let defendants sit up here. And then it's like, well, oh, so everybody who comes out of jail who's representing themselves should be able to sit here? I said, no, they're arrested. They're not free on bail. I'm free on bail. So I'm out here in the audience anyway. What's the problem with me sitting here? The law says I can sit here. I'm presumed innocent. But imagine a camera capturing that. And him coming with, or her, but in this case him, coming with an insufficient reason not to let me sit there. That's not how we do it. He doesn't come up with a law that says, he just says, well, it doesn't happen here. Some nonsense like that. People will begin to realize, wait a minute, representing yourself has such a negative connotation to it that you are almost dismissed just because you're doing that. Judges will insult you in your face, and
Excuse me. Got snuck up there.
Health you. Judges will in your face tell you, well, you know what they say about a lawyer who has himself as a client, right? So he's calling you a fool, right there in your face.
Yeah. Well, it's an old saying,
Yeah, but he's still calling you a fool right in your face in his official capacity. Like, just because you're doing that, you're a fool. He's calling you a fool, but.
Just a second, George, tell him the expression. Some people might not know.
He who represents himself in court
has a fool for a client.
has a fool for a client. Yeah.
And so the judge doesn't even have to finish it, right? He can just say, you know how that goes. He who has the lawyer who represents himself, you know how that goes. So he's really saying it because you can fill it. You're filling it in.
Sure.
Right, because everybody knows it. So he didn't say it, but he did it. That's so. And if you come up and you have questions that they can't answer, if you can film that, people will begin to realize that the law is not as mysterious as it's made out to be. Like it's the mysteriousism. Is that a word? Mysteriousism? Mystique.
Mystique, yes.
The mystique.
Or mystery. The
The mystery. But I like mysteriousism.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. It's like my creative whatever. But that camera would really, and I think and that's why they fight it so hard.
Well,
That's
of course,
why they fight it so hard.
all the state actors don't want a visual record of the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When the process follows the law in an unbiased manner, and the judges stick with that, the system, in theory, could work in better than it does. Let's put it that way. But the hostility that you're referring to towards the self-representing, or the self-presenting, I like to say.
Self-presenting, I like that.
Because, there is a real protectionism of the craft, and it comes back to the bar attorneys.
Yeah.
And so it's not only belittling the self-presenting and maybe even being biased, but it's also punishing them for stepping into an arena that is populated by the guild, by the club members.
Yeah, it's very
and to be effective as a self-presenting litigant, there's a vested interest on the part of the judge not to let you win.
Exactly.
Because his compadres there or colleagues in the bar association, are then not necessary. It cuts into their action. It cuts into their profit scheme.
Monopoly.
It is a monopoly.
Yeah. I'm coming into common law now and understanding how it might be able to play a role, because at common law, your friends could represent you.
Yeah.
So if that wasn't changed in the Constitution, before the vote, like when it was ratified. But that's an avenue I'm looking into, because you'd have to have a constitutional convention to change any part of the Constitution. Now, it says that the self-presented have a right to self-present. I don't even know if that's not it, but we know that was at common law. So even if it's in the Constitution or not, it's in the common law. So it's right, because rights that were not even written in the Constitution were still preserved. Right?
Sure.
They were still preserved. So even if but I've just come into the power of the common law and how you work it. So I'm not really sure. I don't have my ducks lined up. But one thing I know, I was in a case where, and this is during this kind of like protest phase without the bullhorn, because there were like 10 cases. I and a group of other people were doing. In one instance, the court officer, and his name is Gallagher, I remember his name very vividly, was holding my papers. Right? He had my papers, and he was standing like I couldn't get to my own papers. And I said, "Yo, Judge, he has my papers. He stole my papers." I kept saying he stole them because he did steal them. He stole my papers. He's standing right there. And the judge just let him stay there with my papers that I needed to show the judge what I was talking about. And I told the judge, I said, you're just as much a criminal as any of these thugs sitting behind me. Just like that. And he never said a word. And I said it in my tone was very disrespectful, and I meant it to be that way. It was short of cursing, but, because the thief was right there with my papers. I mean, literally from here, it's like 20 feet that way, judge there. And he's holding my papers. I said, the papers are in the folder I need. Nothing. Can you imagine that picture? A camera in the court present.
Who's the character that took your folder?
He was a court officer. When you get arrested, they take when you first get arrested, they're taking everything. The only thing you're walking through with your sneakers, your clothes. You might have your ID, maybe, but they take all you're not walking through when you first get arrested with your papers. And when I first came through, he took my papers, like I never got my papers back, but he had them, bringing them to the court, into the court. Every time I came, he would bring it in. I mean, that's how it was tracked, that he knew where I was going, and he was there, had my papers, but wouldn't give them to me. Actually wouldn't give it to me. And I had to, keep saying that he stole my papers. But my point about the cameras is, could you imagine I'm saying he stole my papers and he's right there and he has the paper I need to show you, Judge, and the judge do nothing. That picture would have been worth gold as to what happens. Imagine if they'll do that.
So you're targeted.
Yeah.
You're a targeted individual.
But when you're a nobody and you're targeted, they get away with stuff like that because nobody sees it. The freedom of the press is really such a very...
selective. It's selective freedom of the press.
Yeah, that...
Of course
it's not. No. So I was really on a crusade. I had a lot of experiences with the camera, trying to get the camera into different courtrooms. But as I'm doing this, of course, I'm studying, right? So I'm just learning more and, always learning more while I'm doing all these things to get the cameras in the courtroom. So eventually, I'm meeting people who they're not studying, but they find themselves in a legal predicament, right? So I become their paralegal. And so it was kind of hard to keep doing the cameras and actually being someone's paralegal, because it's hard to do two different, just law bodies of law, because one like press. The people that they're lawyers. That's all they do is press stuff. They don't do anything else but that. But press stuff, First Amendment stuff, because it's a wide. People have specialties. People have specialties.
Now, the First Amendment, we say freedom of the press, but what does that really entail? What does that mean?
I mean, to me, it means you're absolutely free to do something until you infringe on somebody else's rights. Like, yeah, you should actually be able to walk in with a camera, as long and film. That's what that means to me. Yeah, just like you bring your body in, you bring other property in, right? You don't have to surrender. I mean, weapons, that's one thing, but a camera, that's a press thing. And when they said no law will be made abridging the freedom of the press, that's exactly what and especially back then, like they were like more straight to it, direct.
Well, the control of information is absolutely essential for any tyranny, for any empire.
Yes.
And we're seeing it now in so many ways that it kind of makes my head spin. Where to begin on that topic? For example, I noticed with my YouTube channel, because of, and I only have maybe 60, 70 shows on up, and I haven't published a show in a while, a couple of months, but during the time when I was regularly uploading, a lot of the subject matter that I attacked on my show or presented apparently was not liked by the Google police, thought police. And I laugh because I have 30 subscribers at the most, and a lot of my shows have less than 10 views, and some of them have a couple of my more better shows approach 1,000 views. But but just because of the content, as that I was, well, I was getting to that. The metrics were clearly visible, how my shows were doing.
Yeah.
And then one day, I noticed that show had over 637 views, and now it's got 400 views, and change. I said, what's going on here? And so this happened a couple of times, and I didn't really know what to make of it, other than I guess, they're really trying to bury my information that I'm presenting. So then, as this artificial intelligence is creeping into our lives, and it's not really creeping into our lives, but the machine intelligence has been being developed for a long, long time, far longer than we are aware of, and now, the Google thought police have these algorithms that scan through what you're talking about, what your visual images are, and they're banning all of this content that I like to look at. So I can't even watch other channels on YouTube without going through the search engine, and even the search engine will refuse to give me the show. I mean, so they're really And what's funny to me is the areas that get, they're calling it shadow banning, which is a new term, I guess, deal with people who are basically citizen reporters, people who are out there, well, this is what happened, and this is, to me, or another one is people who are monitoring the weather and the climate. And they're taking issue with the party line that global warming is going to kill us all in 30 years or 10 years if we don't stop everything, that puts carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is asinine. It's nonsense. So
I wouldn't call it asinine, but I did read a report that global warming and the changes are happening more because of the magnetic strength of the Earth.
Right.
Allowing in more
cosmic rays,
which makes more clouds go up, which makes it hotter. And when it's weaker, when it's stronger, right? When it's strong, well,
you're in my territory. These are the things that I'm monitoring. It's called the grand solar minimum, is what we're going on, and we're also going through a magnetic pole reversal. And there are a lot of people reporting that we're also dealing with an extraplanetary system coming through our planetary system around. So there's more planets hanging around than normal. And this happens on a cycle. All of this stuff is cyclical. And the reason I've been arguing against global warming, climate change to me is a meme to get people away from the global warming argument, because the global warming isn't really happening. It's just they have these models, and these models are about none of them are correct.
Well, the temperature is going up, right? It's just what's causing
the trend is pretty much flat. I mean, there are peaks and valleys. And we had some warming during a solar maximum. The point is that I'm getting to is that our planetary climate is driven by the sun, and the amount of gaseous emissions that come off our industry and our cars and our wood fires and even forest fires and volcanoes really contribute less than 1% of that kind of a factor, warming factor, than does if you're going to talk greenhouse gas, the biggest greenhouse gas is water vapor. CO2 barely even registers as an impact on trapping heat. Water vapor, on the other hand, water is a battery for heat and cold. Water holds heat or cold. Heat or the subtraction of heat. And the sun, on the other hand, drives all the systems on the planet. And the sun is not steady. The sun is a variable star. And as a variable star, it has cycles. And we also have what they call the orbit of our planet around the sun, if that's how that goes, because that's another funny topic. Isn't a perfect circle. It's elliptical. And so because of that, there are, they call them Milankovitch cycles. Sometimes the Earth is closer during winter. Sometimes the Earth is closer to the sun during summer, depending on whether you're at the North Pole or the South Pole in either season. You'll frequently, the Earth during the Northern Hemisphere winter will be closer to the sun, so that when the Southern Hemisphere winter happens for them, it's colder at the Arctic and at the Antarctic, because not only are they in dark for 6 months, but they're farther away from the sun in the Earth's orbit. So there's many factors that contribute to our Earth's temperature. All right, so there's that. One of the things that's really present in my mind and that I've been covering on the show is a grand solar minimum, which is a phenomenon that happens Some people say every 200 years. Some people say 600 years. There's different metrics for measuring this phenomenon. But
what is? I don't know what a grand solar minimum.
What that is when the sunspots pretty much just stop, and that's where we're.
Yes.
And sunspots are measurable things that anybody can measure with a telescope and a filter, and you can look at the sun, at the face of the sun, and you'll see black spots appear every so often, and those are solar storms, and they're very hot, and that when you're at a solar maximum, there's a lot of sunspots. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of activity, and right now, we have been, since the 1970s, heading towards the solar minimums getting colder and colder, because now like I said, you have the cycle of the sunspots maximum is up high on the graph, and then the minimum comes down. So during a solar minimum, what happens is those maximum highs get less and less and less, and the troughs get deeper and deeper. And one of the things that's happened in this one that is signaling a real serious solar minimum is that when our maximum during a solar minimum doesn't even get as high as previous minimums.
Right.
Now you're talking about a very, very quiet sun, and then you're talking about glaciation happening, and concurrently we have a magnetic pole reversal. Now, those things happen on really big time scales. We're talking on the order of 250,000 years kind of thing.
So do your reports say that we're in a solar minimum?
Yeah,
we are in a solar minimum.
Even NASA admits it. I mean, the mainstream has a hard time accepting this information. But they're
so the planet should be getting colder then.
And it is, and that's what I was saying. The overall trend line
is downward.
Is going down.
Right. So how are the polar cap? How is all the melting of the glaciers happening if it's getting cooler?
They're not.
Oh, they're not.
They're not. And this is a huge controversy in that community. And when you report on the fact that, well, let's see, we've had a couple of heat waves this year. They've lasted about 3 or 4 days. Right? I can remember heat waves in the 90s that lasted weeks. Yeah. I can remember people in Chicago dying by the droves. And the other metric is, well, who's taking the temperature and where are they taking the temperature? How are they doing that? How is this science being produced? Well, today, for the last 30 or 40 years, all of the stations, not all of them, but many of the reporting stations are on the tarmacs in airports, on the rooftops of cities, buildings, or in other, inappropriate places that don't give you a true overall ambient overall.
Yes,
you're getting the heat island effect,
yes.
And even in the winter, you've got jet engine exhaust blasting towards the thermometers. So there's some slanting going on there to the data.
Well, I can remember when they were throwing around this idea of a carbon tax.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if you remember that.
They're still throwing that idea around.
Are they still?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that in a while.
New York State is about to go to a real extreme, and they're wanting by either 2030 or 2050. The legislators in this current administration in New York State have announced that they want to eliminate all motor vehicles.
Well, gasoline motor, not
all petroleum driven.
Yes. They want to
motor vehicles
electric
completely.
cars.
Completely.
Yes.
And the other thing they want to do is they want to knock out all the coal and natural gas electrical plants.
Well, pollution is real. I mean, pollution is real. I don't think it causes a global warming or global cooling, but pollution itself is real.
And I had talked to this is going back about 15 years ago, to a DEP official at, of all places, a truck stop off the thruway. And we just both happened to be getting coffee at the same time. And I noticed his official,
jacket and all that. Yeah.
Garb that he was wearing. And I what do? You work for the state? And he goes, yeah, and he's an official in the DEP. And I said, oh, that's great. So let me ask you something. How's our Clean Air Act doing? How's our Clean Water and Air Act going? And he goes, well, actually, it's going really well. And then he started unloading on me like their data for up to that point. Like I said, this is about 15 years ago or more. And he said, basically, it works. I mean, it has really worked. The quality of the air in all of the major cities has improved drastically. Many rivers are just self-cleaning. Just by the fact that they stopped putting pollution into the rivers, the rivers are coming back to life in a big way. And so that became a real interesting thing to hear for me. It's like, okay, so we have a success story. And my conspiratorial mind says, well, it was a little too successful. They have to scumble it up. So now they're geoengineering. And that's a whole another aspect of this, climate discussion.
Now, how are you making a connection between GMOs and climate?
Geoengineering.
Terraforming.
Kind of. For who? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
we can't stay here forever, right? We can't stay on this planet forever because the sun's going to go out sooner or later. I mean, it's going to be hundreds of years, but you don't want to wait hundreds of years to prepare, before, because the sun's go. Do you think the sun is going to go forever?
I think that we don't know. I think it's a great mystery. I think the longer I live, the weirder it gets. And like I said, one of these subject matters that is severely shadow banned on YouTube right now is the flat earthers, because they're posing a simple question: show me the curve. All right, and I'm not saying
which curve
of the Earth, and I'm not saying, folks, that I'm with them or against them. I'm just saying, well, they've got some interesting points, and they don't want us to know these points. I mean, who cares if people want to talk about the Earth being flat or not? Why would the Google Thought Police, via YouTube, care?
But
why would they come down hard on them like that?
Well, I mean, as before, right? I know a lot of in the European areas, they thought the world was flat because the church told them it was flat. All right, so there was a vested interest. So now there's a vested interest in it being round. But I don't see how the Earth can be flat if I have like a basketball. If I have a basketball in my hand, I can't. I mean. And I had a ship or a series of ship on the top of the ball, right? If I put one a little further and a little further and a little further and a further.
Christopher Columbus's idea there, right? See, the mast would come up first, and then you would see, more and more of the craft as it got closer to shore.
That right? Yes.
Right.
I mean, that just seems
normal. Now you've got the P900.
What's
Super.
That?
These are readily available, inexpensive video cameras.
Okay.
That have zoom lenses that are crazy good.
Okay.
Crazy good. I mean, you can zoom in on the moon, from a handheld camera.
Okay.
And look at rocks on the moon practically. I mean, it's that serious these new cameras, right? And you've got citizen investigators out there going to the shores of Lake Michigan, going to Lake Pontchartrain, where you have really long vistas, or to the Florida Keys, and they're tracking. And this one Florida housewife, she's a woman in her 50s or 60s, just got curious about all this and figured, well, I'm going to put this puppy to bed,
Okay.
I'm gonna take aim on a super tanker leaving the port here, and one of the ports in Florida. And off this ship goes. And it was a nice, clear day, calm seas, and sea level was very flat. I always get a kick out of that. And so for she films for about an hour, this craft just going and going. And every time it would get out of view, get too small, or she'd
Adjust it.
zoom in on it, and
you
there
could
it,
see
and
it.
the whole thing would come back again.
Okay.
And this was just went on until finally it was just too far away to see. And
She had a tripod?
probably, yeah, no, she was using a tripod. She was on the beach, she was, and she sighted this thing.
So theoretically, then you could stand on Florida and see
ship.
Naples.
Well, that'd probably be, well, I mean, there were probably land masses in between there, here and there, but what she was pointing out is that this thing had gone for many, these super tankers
They're pretty big. Yes.
they're big.
They're big.
They're big. It's like a floating town,
It's big.
And okay, we're down to 2 minutes. Anyway, so the idea is that the Earth, there is a formula for every mile. There should be 8 inches of drop, squared.
Okay.
All right,
For every
and so
mile.
the fall off after 20 miles. All right, so it's like in 1 mile there should be 8 inches of difference.
Right.
In 22 miles, we're talking 287 feet
Right.
of drop. Lake Pontchartrain bridge is 22 miles long, and the difference from one side to the other is about 1.5 inches in height.
Okay.
All right, so it's flat over 22 miles when there should be a
An
measurable.
eighth of a
There should be
right.
200
20
some feet of difference. So that's why I think it's funny. So we're going to wrap it up. And thank you for your insights about the law and your experiences, Posar.
Yeah.
And this is a Conant Show wrapping it up here. And hopefully we'll get to come back again and do another show here before too long. And have a nice August, folks.
See you.